So Brenda Rittenauer with the City of Boulder is going to start us off and talk about the interpretation that is available during the main portion of the meeting. Brenda, are you ready?
I am ready, Katie, thank you. Welcome, everyone. I am happy to be able to support in a small way this meeting tonight. And we're glad that you're here to learn more about the next steps of your process. Tonight, we are supported by interpretation into Spanish for the first part of this meeting. And to access interpretation, we ask that everyone, whether you'd like to hear the meeting in English or in Spanish, choose your language using the interpretation icon found at the bottom of your screen. You'll see on the slide that I have shared that icon, which looks like a globe. So we ask you to click that icon and then choose English or Spanish, whichever language you prefer to experience this part of the meeting in. Thank you so much again for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Brenda, and our interpreters for their support tonight. So Gary Sampson, our recovery manager for Boulder County, is going to lead us through and facilitate the meeting tonight. I just wanted to welcome the elected officials we have on the call and let you know as participants that you have elected officials listening to your questions, comments, concerns, and needs. All three county commissioners, Commissioner Locheman, Commissioner Levy, and Commissioner Jones are here, and representatives from Senator Hickenlooper, Senator Fenberg, and Congressman Negusie's office are also here to listen and learn from what the community needs. They will not be speaking tonight, but they are here to listen and hear and participate in the breakout rooms when we get to that point. Thank you, elected officials, for being here to listen to the your community members. And Gary, I will pass it off to you.
Great, thanks, Katie. And thanks everyone for being here. I want to just share one thing about my own experience in situation. As you can see in my face, I have some pretty good scars and black eye. Just want to assure you, I'm not a ballroom brawler. I actually had a skin cancer procedure removal, very successful one. So I just want to let you know that because I know it can be a little off-putting. So with that said, I want to welcome you and just go through some opening remarks and then walk you through the agenda. First, I just want to say this is a beginning of the journey. This is a first meeting of numerous meetings we will have. I've been doing this work, this disaster recovery work, since 2010. This was the 5th natural disaster we've had in the county that I've worked on. So we bring a lot of experience to bear. Hopefully we can meet in person soon. I want to acknowledge that there are a lot of unknowns and how this can be really hard. And in particular, unknowns around the timeline for rebuilding, for debris removal. But we're going to begin that process of filling in that timeline tonight and tomorrow at the debris removal meeting. And it'll just take time. Just bear with us as we work together, partner together to create this recovery process. We're really working hard to create those clear guidelines. And a key part of that is listening to you, listening to what your needs are, what your challenges are, what your ideas are. So we are going to spend half of the night in listening mode. I also want to set some expectations. As I said, I've been down this path a few times, and most recently with the Cowwood fire in October of 2020. And I just want to let you know, in terms of that time frame, out of the 22 homes that were destroyed, we have 3 of them that are actively in rebuilding phase. There's another half dozen that are close to getting their building permits or applying for that. So as you can see, it takes time. And I'm not trying to be a negative about that. I'm really trying to be transparent and honest with you. I want to assure you that county staff is going to be here working alongside with you for the duration. We're not going anywhere. This is our job. This is our priority. The commissioners have made this #1 priority. But it will take time. Some of you quicker than others. Everyone will have to recover in their own way. So I just wanted to let you know that. In terms of the agenda, I just want to walk you through what to expect tonight. So I'm going to, after I go through the agenda, share some announcements and some resources. We're really fortunate to have 2 people who have gone through this in Boulder County. One person in the 4 Mile Canyon fire and another recently in the Cowwood fire. They're going to share their rebuilding and recovery stories. We also have a woman who is an architect and also a fire survivor herself, who's going to go over an overview of the recovery process, some of the timing expectations and her experience. And then we're going to spend a good amount of time with county staff talking about rebuilding and permitting in unincorporated Boulder County and how to move forward. And then also share with you some ideas around rebuilding and incentives that we are exploring as well to try to make this easier for folks. And then with that, we'll have used up half of the time. We'll then move into breakout rooms. We have 5 breakout rooms that you will be assigned. And we'll have a facilitator and a recorder in each one. We will open up the chat at that time to welcome your questions, both verbally and in the chat, and ask you to share your experience. What are your challenges? What are your ideas? What are your concerns? We're not going to answer them tonight. What we are going to do is create a FAQ, a frequently asked question document, and post that within a week on our website. We'll let you know when that comes out to answer as many of these questions as possible. So we'll spend a good portion of the evening listening, and then we'll call you back into the larger group and wrap up. So with that, I'll go back to some of the announcements. So as many of you may know, tomorrow we're hosting a community meeting that will focus on debris removal. That will include all the affected property owners in the burn area. We'll also be having public health talk about some of the health issues about returning to your home. So please don't ask any debris removal questions tonight. Save them for tomorrow. The other announcement I want to make is on January 27th at 6 o'clock, United Policyholders, which is a insurance advocacy nonprofit, will be holding their kickoff webinar series on navigating insurance claims. And I want to urge you to take advantage of this resource. I've worked with them in every disaster. They work nationwide, and they are a huge asset to helping people navigate that really challenging process, claims. 2 other things I want to share with you. One is, I'm sure many of you have already gone to our website. I'll ask someone to put that in the chat, but the address, but it's bouldercounty.org/Marshall That's the place to go to learn about all the different resources for you to obtain at Boulder County. Finally, we are going to be posting a link to a survey as well. Not only do we want to listen and hear your questions, we have some questions for you to answer. And so we will put a link in the chat to encourage you to fill out this brief survey. It's 8 or 9 questions, kind of about where you're thinking at in terms of rebuilding. So with that, I think we'll move forward. And
Gary?
yeah.
I just had one more announcement that I forgot that
Sure.
I didn't want to. So the last, sorry, everybody, before we move on to the agenda, I wanted to make sure to thank our community members, Cheryl, Deanna, and Joy, who are helping manage the unincorporated Boulder County email list. If you are not currently getting the emails that Cheryl sends out regularly, connect with me and I will get you on that email list. I will put my email in the chat right now so that you all have access to it. And that I also missed that Senator Bennett's office is also here listening in our participants as well. So thank you all again for the elected officials to be here listening. And back to you, Gary.
Great, thanks. So you'll see in the chat, we put in the website for the county, and then we'll put in the survey link as well. So with that, I would like to introduce Debbie Martin, who is a fire survivor from the 2010 4 Mile Canyon fire, to share her story.
Thank you. And Katie's going to share my screen because I have a few prepared items to share with you.
Yep, I'm pulling it up right now, Debbie.
Thank you.
Well, share screen. All right, here we go.
Great, thank you. So again, I'm Debbie Martin, and my husband Charlie and I lost our home in the 2010 4 Mile Canyon fire. I want to thank Gary Sambason for inviting me to speak with you tonight about our experience in rebuilding our home. And this is necessarily a very abbreviated version of the story, but we're really limited tonight. So let's start. So the question that Gary posed is, how long did the rebuilding process take? And my estimation is that it's 19 months. And I've shown here a short timeline, again, very abbreviated, of what steps we had to take. Now, I'm not discussing insurance here. I'm really discussing kind of the physical steps that we took in order to rebuild our house. So you can see that the house burned down in September 2010. And even later that month, the Boulder 4 Mile Rebuilding Forum was put on by the Boulder Green Building Guild, which is now the Colorado Green Building Guild. That seemed really early in the process, but you will see that you actually have to keep moving during this process of rebuilding. So by 2010, November in 2010, my husband returned from Antarctica. The reason that that's important is that I had to put in a request to the insurance company to for an extension on the time frame for us to start filing some of our paperwork, because I wanted to do that together with him. So that was part of why his return in really almost a month and a half after the fire, that's why that's in the timeline. By November, we also had moved to removing the debris, which turned out to be very expensive. You'll be hearing more about that tomorrow night. We also got our full policy limit reimbursement Part A, which is the dwelling coverage in your insurance policy. And that was because it was very obvious to our adjuster that our house was worth the policy limit and more. So we got a check for the full policy limit right away in November. In 2011 of January, we started interviewing architects, and we identified architects partly based on the presentations that the architects and builders gave in the 4 Mile Rebuild Forum. By February of 2011, we had hired our architect. And then you can see there's a 6-month interval where before we hired our contractor. That's partly because we wanted to make sure that we had the funds in place to really proceed with rebuilding our house. So in that 6-month period, we made sure that we not only had the full policy limit for the Part A, which I said we had already received, but we also wanted to make sure we could maximize our reimbursement for Part B, which was the contents of our house, and to look at our savings system that we could add to that rebuilding budget. So by July of 2012, we had moved back into our new home. Next slide, Katie, please. So another question that Gary asked was, did we decide to build back in a better or greener way? And what were some of the specific things that we did? So at the time that we were rebuilding, Boulder County had already implemented the Boulder County Build Smart regulations. So much of what we did in terms of energy efficiency was already in the code for Boulder County. The second thing was that we were considered to be in wildfire zone 1, and we were rebuilding to ignition resistant construction standards. So that affected things like the roofing, the siding, the decking, and other design considerations like the roof angles. We had our own list that we added to those constraints, and that was we wanted our house to be low maintenance, and we wanted to be more suitable for aging in place. So the question is, did that add cost to what we had available to rebuild, and did insurance cover those costs? And yes, the costs were higher than our dwelling limit, for example, in insurance. But there's also, I'd like you to understand that we were going from a 1970s home, which was the first home that we ever bought, to a house that was going to be built in 2012. So that's a hard call to make. It did cost more, but there's a good reason for that to have cost more, I think. So the total rebuilding budget that we ended up working with had to do, we've amalgamated Part A reimbursed, which covers the dwelling, Part B, which was the contents coverage, and we added our personal savings to that amount. Next slide, Katie. How did we take care of our emotional well-being during our recovery? Part of it is that we have some inherent resiliency that derives from who we are, from our families, from our friends, from our coworkers. That worked really well for us. The second thing is that we loved the whole process of rebuilding our house. It was an exciting opportunity for us. That was a process that was creative, it was collaborative, and it was very uplifting. And to this day, we have lasting friendships with our architect and builder. That's how close a relationship we developed with them. The third aspect is that we felt a tremendous amount of gratitude, and we still do. And we felt that to our family and friends, to Boulder County, which has bent over backwards during that disaster and all of the subsequent disasters to help us rebuild as a community. Gary Simfason is your hero, let me tell you, and all the other people that work for the county. We were also grateful to the community for rallying, for donations, for lots of kind of camaraderie during that whole process. And also we were very grateful to the vendors. There were many vendors that stepped up to give us discounts on rebuilding, places like McGuckin's, Macy's, the lumber yards. They were all very generous in helping us rebuild after the 4 Mile Canyon fire. Next slide, Katie, please. What do I wish I knew at the beginning of the rebuilding? I'm not really sure. And as Gary said at the very beginning, it's a journey, and you learn a lot about yourself and your desires and your community in this journey. Next slide, please. Is there any other advice that we'd like to share? For us, the house burning down had a couple silver linings. One was that we ended up with a house that is really energy efficient. It's really low maintenance, and it is more suitable for aging in place. And then for me, because I'm a scientist that works on post-fire effects, we also used the land and the building as research opportunities to understand the chemistry of wildfire ash, and also to look at the effects of fire on soil properties. So both of those things were silver linings for us. Anyway, I want to thank you again, and I wish you the best in the journey that you're on now.
Thanks so much, Debbie, for taking your time to share your story. And now I want to introduce Charlie Pellerin. Charlie lost his home in the 2020 Cowwood fire. Charlie? And I just want to state that we will post these presentations, and Charlie did a wonderful write-up, much more in-depth write-up that he can speak to tonight, and we will post that as well. Charlie, it's all yours.
Okay, so I can summarize my presentation pretty easily. Ditto. We had almost exactly the same experience across the board. About the permit timing, we started in April. We initially weren't going to rebuild and chose to because of frankly, the poor quality properties in the real estate market. And the more we got into it, the happier we were. So I think we got our permit in September, and just so you know, the county will expedite this. They promised 6 weeks to approve our permit, which apparently is order of magnitude or two faster than normal. And I think they pretty much did that. The first part was we picked our builder first, and he picked the architect. So we're going to move in late this year, and so I think the timeline's pretty similar. As far as Build Back Better, she hit the nail on the head. The county's rules are all good. They're sensible. The international standards. We're gonna have a fireproof house, and I'm gonna finishing up a paper on this. I'll send it to Gary like my other paper, with two thoughts: how to make any existing house much more fireproof, and how to make our house absolutely fireproof. And I think it's going to be the same kind of exactly the same things. We have very resilient systems, very energy efficient, a much higher quality house. And the same thing, a house will take us into old age, which the original house would not. By the way, that's our new house in the background. And we have things like ADA, door openings, elevator, all these things. So I'd say for us, it's a very positive experience. The same with the builder and the architect. They've become lifelong friends. I'm a NASA project manager, and I run this the same way. We have requirements reviews. We have meetings once a week, the architect and builder and my wife and I on Zoom for 2 hours. We go over everything. It's been great to work with them. I haven't seen any discounts yet, so that gives me hope about that. What do I wish I knew at the beginning? I wished I didn't believe the real estate agent friends of mine who all badmouthed rebuilding. It's turned out to be a really great experience. And I'm going to tell you that when this ends, we're going to be so much better off. How about our emotional state? I do team building. No, I don't. I used to do team building internationally before COVID came. And I teach people how to manage their mindsets and have methods to do that. And that's one of the few absolute choices you have to take away. So we've lived in the gratitude of having each other, having the emotional and financial resources to come out of this better. So that's kind of where we are. Advice, I've already talked to several people who've contacted me through various means about what to do. And it's not very different from us or maybe Debbie, that our insurance was grossly below the rebuild cost of our house. But the coverage B she mentioned, the personal property stuff, by the way, she defined it correctly. So if you turn your house upside down, it's everything that would fall out. That turned out to be a gigantic windfall. And so we have the resources for this, and maybe other people won't, but I'll tell you this, interest rates are the lowest they've been in 1,000 years, and you've got a gigantic down payment. So I would encourage you to look at the rebuilding. I think in Colorado Springs, 70% of the people rebuilt there, and they all built better houses. So what you can do, you can build a fireproof, resource stingy house that really is designed for the future. And the rebuilding process has been entirely enjoyable. The architect and builder and I and my wife get along great, and it's been really fun. I've bought a lot of houses. First time I ever could make one like this. It's going to be an astounding place when we're through. So Gary, there, and by the way, same kudos for Gary and the county, everybody in the building permit process. Could tell some stories about you, Gary, but I'm not going to, because you might create too much expectations, but they're not kidding. They're there for you, and Gary's there for you, and they're going to do outstanding things. You're going to feel very cared for. And I will say this, that as we're in our fourth move since the fire, and we're going to stay here until we move into our new house. But everybody that we've encountered, from the people in the hotels to everybody, it's been a testimonial to the positive side of the human condition. People have been there for us, and just in little ways, over and over and over, landlords, everybody. So you're in a good place. There's lots of people to take care of you, and with little luck, you'll come out of this even better. And I think there's nothing going to be as important going into the future than a fireproof, resource stingy house, and you can do it. And I'm writing another paper. Gary distributes my stuff to you. I'm writing another paper on the fireproofing existing houses and building a fireproof house that I'll send you, Gary, in 3 or 4 days. You can send it out. And if anybody wants to talk with me, the COVID closed my business, so I've got lots of time. So anybody wants to talk with me about any of these things, I'm happy to help. And there we are.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks so much. If you want to put your contact information in the chat, please go ahead. Next up, Julia Donahoe. I'll have her introduce herself and just remind our speakers to speak slowly for the Spanish interpretation. Thanks, Julia.
Hi, yes, I am an architect and an attorney and a general contractor, and I live in California. I live in a community, Santa Rosa, where we lost 6,000 homes all in one night between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And it was a horrifying experience for our community. And I became involved with disaster recovery locally, and then helped build a startup to rebuild homes faster. So I'm going to walk you through a presentation that I've created for the state chapter of the American Institute of Architects to talk about the rebuilding process and help you have some perspective on the whole duration of it. I'm going to share screen now and enter that presentation. Okay, can everyone see that? Okay, so this is a toolkit for the AIA California. AIA means American Institute of Architects, but it's applicable to the experiences you have, and I've edited out a lot of the stuff that it's not really relevant for you. The first thing you need to know is that there are 5 phases of disaster management. There's readiness, which is annual training. Response, which is the immediate steps you take the first few days after disaster. There's recovery, which are the activities you take to plan how to rebuild and restore your community. There's the rebuilding process where you're actually doing the rebuilding of homes and commercial buildings. And then there's a review process, which is really important for how you move forward as a community. And you can think of that in a timeline. So readiness should be an annual kind of preparation every time you have new changes in leadership in the community, not just in the not just for the architects, but in the community. There should be an annual review. Most government agencies have a emergency preparedness section, and the more these things happen, the more prepared they are to deal with this. I lived in Colorado for a decade and experienced wildfires down in Southwest Colorado before I moved back to California. The next is the response is really a period of days from the disaster. Some disasters take longer, like ours was really 2 weeks before anyone could go back in where they were found things to be safe. But the response time is when the first responders start to leave town and the government, the local government takes over with disaster recovery services and centers. The next period is really the recovery period where the local jurisdiction is still really the leader in this, but they don't rebuild homes. So there's some sort of transition that goes on about how you work with local government and permitting officials and community-based organizations and with your insurance companies with the debris removal, all those environmental cleanup issues that are not just for your property, but for the whole community. And then the rebuilding really goes more to the private sector where you're hiring an architect or contractor, a team to work with you and rebuild your property. There's parts that people may not understand, which is pre-construction, construction, and then post-construction. Pre-construction is all the testing, design, engineering, and permits. So a lot of people say, give me my permit fast, but really it takes you going and getting all the testing done, the geotech, the design, the engineering. You need to make sure your building's going to be safe for snow loads before you can apply for the permit. So the government is not really the holdup on permits. So be aware of that. It's going to take you some time to be ready to submit for permit. And the faster you can get involved in that part, the better off you'll be. And then afterwards, I just want to do a quick plug for architects. Disasters have happened throughout time, and how quickly we rebuild is really important. And some of our best architects have been capable of helping a whole community rebuild faster. Julia Morgan was an architect in San Francisco when the earthquake happened, and she lost her office. She moved into her parents' garage and moved her drafting staff there. And she had to compete for workmen who were all living in tents and for materials for everyone trying to rebuild. But she got the Fairmont Hotel, which is a big building in the middle of San Francisco, rebuilt in less than a year, and a big party. It was really important. And she got this project because she knew reinforced concrete, and she'd already demonstrated it across the bay in Mills College. And this bell tower that she built had not a crack in it after the earthquake. And earthquake codes changed immediately within 4 months of the 1906 disaster because of her work in reinforced concrete, and the whole building industry changed. So when they talk about codes, better codes actually are better buildings. And we learned through that whole 1906 earthquake that reinforced concrete could really be useful for earthquake and fire, and it became really important in California. The readiness part, I'm going to kind of skip through because that'll be something that you'll come back to later. The responses, what I want to talk about is really the number of days after the event happens, and there's safety of the people immediately around you, making sure people have housing. All those things are really the most important thing right in the beginning. And then the beginning of community outreach, such as this meeting, and getting everything going. So you've already kind of gone to that. Now you're in this kind of meeting phase. The government officials, this is Governor Jerry Brown and Senator Feinstein and Senator Kamala Harris showed up in our small community in the high school gym with everyone there. And And this is what response looked like before COVID. And now it looks like Zoom meetings like this. So maybe it's better this way because there's a lot of anxiety in this room and not a lot of answers. A lot of people talking. Architects can help in this initial phase by just giving you guidance on what it's going to take. This is a house that was rebuilt in the Coffee Park area of Santa Rosa. So I went around and took some photos of the houses that were interesting. It really was an opportunity to design and think differently. But the architects at this moment can do things pro bono to help you understand the process and to help you get going. And then also working with the politicians, with the permit officials, working with the newsmakers, helping people understand the ramifications of all the decisions that have to go on, and also learning themselves so they can be better prepared to help you as you rebuild your homes. The next phase is the recovery process, which is usually a matter of months. So sometimes you would say 2 days, 2 months, 2 years. Some people say 4 days, 4 months, 4 years. 3 days, 3 months, 3 years. It varies according to your community, according to your situation, according to the size of the disaster, according to the insurance regulations in your state, and how they apply in an emergency situation where many people have suffered a disaster and the governor has declared a disaster. So the important thing is to think of is these months right now are the recovery period. You don't have to have your house rebuilt tomorrow. This is the time to think about it and to find the right architect, find the right contractor, for the government to organize. And then it will be a time of pivot. This is a time when you go from the government is the person you look for answers to finding your team of people that are going to help you rebuild your property. So just briefly, there's meetings that you can attend like this one. There's all sorts of community outreach out there. There's all sorts of behind the scenes involvement of architects, engineers, planning officials, permitting officials, government officials, community-based organizations. All sorts of things are going on right now from all different avenues. And also the architects are learning what they need to help you build back better. Architects also get involved in a variety of things, which I'm going to skip that one, but they're doing a lot of things behind the scene according to their interests. And then when you move into the design and engineering phase, the insurance actually does pay for the architectural design, so you should make sure to discuss that with your adjuster. They don't always include enough money for the architectural design. All the pre-construction costs can be 10 to 25% of the total construction. So really keep that in mind. If they say it's going to cost $500,000 to rebuild your house, add 50 for the design and engineering. If it's going to cost $1 million, add 100,000, so forth. Some architects and engineer teams are going to cost even more if you want to do something very custom. So be aware of that. And look for meetings with architects. I think they may be trying to set it up so that it can be by appointment, one-on-one sessions where you can sit down with an architect and talk to them. They'll give you any kind of advice. You would, of course, sign a waiver. You don't have to enter any kind of contract to sit and have a pro bono meeting with an architect or any number of architects. They're probably willing to give you some time and help you understand your situation the best. And then the rebuilding process is probably what you're most interested in understanding the ramifications of. This is going to take years, 2, 3, 4, 10 years sometimes. That the national average is 25% of homes are rebuilt in 5 years. Our community wanted to do much better than that. So we really worked on ways to help people rebuild together with their neighbors, and reached out to people to make sure they could get into the process. I want to give you this picture. 4 months in, one house was rebuilt. This house was in permit before the fire started. So they already had a building permit. They already had drawings. They were ready to go. And the house that was there burnt down, and they had a tabula rasa to start their construction. So they had a roof on it in 4 months. So that is not the norm, and don't expect it to happen that fast. There's a process. You do have to go through the debris removal, getting your team together, doing your pre-construction services, applying for your permit, You may want to bid your project out to 3 different contractors, or you may want to hire the contractor who brings your designer. There's different ways to do that. You'll need to investigate that. But that's going to take a while. Then the construction phase, once it finally starts, is going to take some time because everyone is competing for materials and workmen, just like you saw in the picture of Julia Morgan and the tents. Just think everybody's competing for the engineers, the architects, the contractors, the materials. Everything is going to take some time. The typical custom home building can be a 25-year process. When I lived in Colorado, I lived there for a decade. I built some beautiful homes for people in Pagosa Springs, Colorado. But some of them bought their land 20 years before they were ready to build. So they spent a lot of time imagining and thinking about it. Sometimes they spent 2 years just designing it. I had some clients who visited me as their 4th architect, and they got a full set of drawings from the previous architects. If they actually built what I drew for them, I was very, very excited. And I had some wonderful clients that did build what I designed, but it takes some time to find the right team. Normally, this is the normal process, but you have to do it in a different schedule. So this isn't how it normally happens. And most of you wouldn't normally go and build your own house in a custom way. So architects can provide you that pro bono assistance at the front end. They can provide help during the design and engineering. They can also protect you from unscrupulous contractors, which we had a number of in our community. We had people who took huge deposits from people and disappeared. People who wrote contracts and then just asked for more and more money and never really finished houses and then left the state. So you have to be very careful. An architect can be your representative on the job site if it's not in your wheelhouse. They can be your team leader and make sure that everything's on the up and up. And that is one of their services that they can provide, is to protect you as you go through this process. There are about 20 different contracts you might have to enter in the process of going from an empty lot into a rebuilt home that you've moved into. So it's really worthwhile to get a team leader that can manage some of those contracts separately so that you don't have to enter all of them yourself individually. Here's another house from the Coffee Park area. The insurance is quite interesting, and you will need to take some time during this recovery phase to understand your insurance and to understand the cost estimates you're hearing from builders, because as the 2 previous, Debbie and I forgot the other gentleman's name, Charles, I think, said your insurance policy has A, B, C, and D sections. So the A, B, C's of insurance are the dwelling, the other structures, and the personal property. And the D is usually the loss of use, which means the rental property that they will put you up in. So usually you can use any of A, B, and C toward the cost of rebuilding your house. And I do these dashboards for people to help them really understand how far their insurance is going to go and whether they're appropriately insured, underinsured, what are they going to do to actually rebuild the quality of house that they want, understanding what their new dwelling, new site structures, new soft costs might be, and what their aspirations are for the interiors. So in this particular example, at the low end, they had enough money from their insurance policy to rebuild, but at the more custom end, they would have had to put in some more money. So this is a really important thing to get a good handle on right now. A lot of the money will get paid out over time. I advise you to keep your mortgage in place. Don't pay off your mortgage and then go get another loan. Keep your mortgage in place. They will help you rebuild and help protect you from fraudulent contractors. So keep your mortgage in place, and then the insurance checks go signed to them, and it's a process to get the money back, but it does work. Thousands of people in Sonoma County have gotten their houses rebuilt with their mortgages in place, and so I urge you to keep it that way, because it is protection. You saw that at 4 months, 1 house was built. Here at 15 months, we had 1,000 into permit. At 15 months, we had 1,000 houses. This is in the city, so maybe there were 2,000 houses total in the city, maybe 1,800. There was 4,000 in the county then of our 6,000 that were down. But so you can see it takes some time to get in through permit and into construction. And by 33 months, we had 1,300 completed. That means they had certificate of occupancy and they could move back in. And we still had 689 in construction. So that's about 2,000. And there were still a few stragglers at 3 years. But this is phenomenal statistics. This is not the norm nationally. This is because we really worked with our government officials, with our homeowners, with everyone in the community to really work on the process of getting people back. Post-disaster building really can be done in 8 to 24 months, but you do have to follow a strict schedule and you have to stick to it. If you have loss of use on your insurance, it will run out if you don't stick to this schedule. So you have to find people who are willing to work with you this way and that they aren't overloading themselves so that they won't be able to help. So that's really important. I was a big advocate for whole neighborhood rebuilding. How do you get this whole neighborhood back? That's by these 5 homeowners all working with the same contractor. Then you get more of the street back and it's better for the real estate. You don't have to think of yourself as alone, but this also happens on a mountainside. If you can get some economies going by working with your neighbors and get more people on your hillside back, that's really critical. Finally, after the disaster is over, it's really important to have community review process and really talk about your lessons learned, look at your success metrics, and just try to identify what things need to happen for the future. And really look at your statistics. For our neighborhoods that had an HOA, we did 87 to 95% rebuilt. For our neighborhoods that were workforce housing, which were close together, we did 80 to 90% rebuilt. In the custom areas, it was more difficult, and out in the outlying areas, it was even harder. So, but we really push these statistics, and that's something that you can do in your community. The more houses that get rebuilt, the better. The codes are changing. I also serve on a HUD committee that's been working on resilient construction guidelines for the whole country for every kind of disaster. And those should be coming out pretty soon, should help everybody. We have case studies if you're interested in knowing more about what we've done in California. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. Thanks so much for providing such a really great overview of the rebuilding process and your experience in California. So next, we want to actually hear from some Boulder County staff, Kim Sanchez and Ron Flax, about the rebuilding and permitting efforts underway and how we're going to move forward. And again, I just want to remind our speakers about the Spanish translation. So do breathe in between sentences and take your time. And just for folks who just got into the meeting, we are going to have breakout sessions after these two presentations, and then that will be the time to ask questions, to share your concerns. Thanks. Kim?
Thanks, Gary. Hi, everyone. I'm here with Ron Flax, who is the Chief Building Official for Boulder County. My name is Kim Sanchez, and I'm the Deputy Director of Planning and Community Planning and Permitting. I'm grateful to see so many people as a part of this meeting. I wish it wasn't for these circumstances, and I do want you to know that we're so sorry for everything that you're having to go through right now, and we're committed to working with you as we move forward. Those may sound like words, but we truly have been working our butts off already up until this point, and we look forward to developing relationships with you as we move forward. We're here for the long haul. So I will be leading some of our rebuilding effort along with Susie Strife, who's in our Office of Sustainability, Climate Action, and Resiliency. So while Gary is leading overall recovery, Ron and I will be focusing along with Susie on the rebuilding piece. We've worked on many past disasters, so including the 4 Mile Fire, 2013 flood, and most recently the Calwood Fire. So unfortunately, we do have experience working with property owners on getting you back to your home. And that's our interest here, is really trying to facilitate the process to make things as easy for you as possible so that you can rebuild and get back into your own home again. So the first thing I want to hit on before I turn it over to Ron on some of the specifics about permitting is that we will be handling all fire impacted rebuilding and repairs separate from all of our other applications that are in the queue. So I know there are some architects and builders and some homeowners may be aware of this, but we have a high demand of construction projects in unincorporated Boulder County. And because we want to prioritize and expedite working with this particular community who's experienced the devastation from the Marshall Fire, we will be working with you separately outside of our typical review processes, which means you won't need to schedule a pre-application conference like you would regularly in our department. You don't need to get on any lists to submit your applications. We'll be working specifically with your groups, having more community meetings, and processing your permits in a prioritized and expedited way. So I'm going to get back to some of the planning around this, but first Ron Flax is going to give you an overview of the types of permits that we're ready to issue right now and some of the first steps that you may be thinking about.
Yes, hi, Ron Flax with Boulder County. The first steps for these properties is really about getting the sites cleaned up. A lot of that information will be talked about tomorrow evening as we hear about the community-wide debris removal program. We are normally we issue what we call our deconstruction permits, but in this case it's going to be a little bit different because these are really about site clearing. Normally we're not going to be trying to reuse any of these materials, so we are right now trying to coordinate some of the details of those permits, and we expect to be in a position to start issuing those permits probably by the end of this week for those folks who are ready. We're just trying to align ourselves with that program and answer some of the remaining questions to make sure that we can help people do this in a safe manner as possible, both for the people working on the projects, but also for the surrounding community and the watershed, making sure that we're not creating any additional hazards by the handling of these materials. So that'll be the first step. Once the sites are clean, some of the other issues that we know are going to come up pretty quickly have to do with temporary structures, whether those are storage temporary storage structures or temporary dwellings. So those will be things that we will need to be starting to process those permits. We are going to do everything we can to enable people to find ways to manage this. Some sites are going to be easier than others in terms of the size of the site, and thinking about what kinds of water supply and septic system are going to be available on the sites, but we will be looking at those permits. And then finally, we are gearing ourselves up to help people with the actual new homes, replacement homes, and the permits for that. Right now, we currently are operating under the 2015 set of codes. We had actually planned to be adopting newer codes, but COVID has derailed that plan a couple of times. So right now we're still under the 2015 code. So that's what most of you I expect will be rebuilding under. We do understand that there's a lot of anxiety about meeting today's codes when we're starting from older homes, and as some of the speakers indicated, there's a lot of changes to those codes over the years, both structural changes, electrical, plumbing, energy efficiency. These are all things that are different in today's code compared to what your house might have originally been built under. We're going to do everything we can to help people understand those rules and guide them through the process. A number of our speakers emphasized the value of working with a good design professional to lead that process. I strongly agree with that. The ease with which we can review permits really has to do with the quality of the permit application itself. So the better the application, the faster the review process. But as was indicated, we will be prioritizing these permits, and the actual permit review process should actually, once we have all the information needed, should move quite quickly through our pipeline again, because we will be putting them to the top of the list. So with that, I'll pass it back to Kim. But I guess just, our websites have a lot of ways to reach out to us and contact us with information. So we do encourage you to reach out with specific questions as they show up. So thank you.
Thanks, Ron. So before you get to the permitting process, if you're doing a new rebuild, normally you would have what's called a site plan review. Instead of site plan review, we have an article in our land use code. It's Article 19, which are procedures following disasters. That allows us to develop a specific review process for rebuilding after an event like this. So we have specific regulations for rebuilding after the 4 Mile fire. We have specific regulations for rebuilding after the 2013 flood. And most recently, we have regulations that deal with rebuilding after the Calwood fire. That is our intent for this event as well, is to come up with a specific set of limited provisions that would be a review process for you prior to getting your building permit. Now, the intent of this is to really evaluate what the important issues are in your area that we need to address before you can move forward with your building permit. But this is not intended to be, a hang up for you. It's really to help you design in a more resilient way. So looking at some of the, fire protection measures that might be applicable in your particular area. We also want to make sure that you are able to rebuild what you had before with some minimal oversight that we'll be able to assist you with. So looking at, what size of a home did you have previously? What height was it? What location was it in? Knowing that you may want to make some modifications to your rebuild as you move forward. So a lot of this meeting today is really to hear from you about the modifications that you may be considering, the types of changes that you might want to make, so that we can factor those in and work together with you when designing some of the provisions for rebuilding. We do want to make sure we try to capture the changes that you're considering and that you'd like to make to your homes, so that we can incorporate that into the review in a really easy and streamlined way to get you onto your building permit. Now, as Ron and other speakers alluded to, there are some steps that you'll need to take before rebuilding is actually physically possible on your parcel. But to the extent that we can help you get geared up for that rebuilding process, we're going to be able to do that. One of the approaches that we're considering and we'd like your feedback on is having case managers assigned to each of you. So since we've got a relatively large community here, 156 structures that were lost and 48 that were damaged, on top of the smoke damage that might have been experienced, we want to make sure that we're giving you the individual attention that you may need to answer some of your questions. So please feel free to give some of that feedback in the breakout rooms, along with the other questions that we have. We've gotten a lot of specific questions from residents, architects, and builders about what sizes will be allowable, what changes will be allowable, those sorts of things. The answer to that question is we don't know yet. We want to hear from you. So we want to know what it is that you need and want to move forward, and then we'll develop the approach to move forward as quickly as we can. So we really look forward to hearing from you in the breakout rooms. Also, just want to direct people to look at the Marshall Fire webpage. There's information on there about how to inspect your foundations if you're considering reusing them, what you would need to do in order to assess your on-site wastewater systems and septic systems, and also information on how to assess any damage that's done to your wells or water lines. So those are information pieces that are already on the website, and we can discuss further in the breakout rooms as well. We do have a handout that will be coming out soon that hopefully will address some of this in a consolidated manner. So we look forward to getting that information out to you as well. So for now, I'll turn it over to Gary again to introduce Zach. Thanks.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Ron. And as I said, we really want to hear from you coming up next about your thoughts. But before that, we're also, as you can imagine, hearing about some opportunities to find incentives for green building opportunities. So I want to hand it over to Zach to share kind of where we're at in that.
Thanks, Gary. Hi, everybody. I'm Zach Swank. I'm the Built Environment Coordinator in Boulder County's Office of Sustainability, Climate Action, and Resilience. And first, I just want to say on a personal level that my heart goes out to all of you. I honestly can't imagine how difficult what you're going through is like. But like my other Boulder County colleagues, I'm going to be working very hard to make it a little bit easier for you going forward. And I'm here tonight to share that Boulder County, the city of Louisville, the town of Superior, the state, Excel Energy, various nonprofits, volunteers, equipment manufacturers, tradespeople, et cetera, are all collaborating on strategies, support, and resources to help you rebuild and repair clean, efficient, and comfortable homes that have a lower contribution to climate change. And I'd like to acknowledge that there's information floating around in the community that energy efficiency requirements are driving increases in the cost of rebuilding. From looking at the studies that have been done, we only see a slight increase, if any increase at all, that's driven purely by energy efficiency requirements. And would like to point out that those requirements save you money over time. Nonetheless, we know that underinsurance is a massive issue, and whether you're underinsured or not, everyone is concerned about the cost of rebuilding. And so that's why the collaboration of all the different organizations have gotten together to explore opportunities for financial incentives, rebates, special loans, manufacturer discounts, and other strategies to make rebuilding an efficient and low carbon home easier for you. We're also concerned about making sure that the program that we develop and the assistance we provide reaches those who need it most. So we're working to identify community organizations that work with renters, low-income residents, and others who need more help restoring safe living conditions and building back better. We're just getting started on this work. And it involves a lot of different actors and getting a lot of approvals. But in one small early win, we've worked with Excel to double their rebates for replacing insulation in homes that survived but have smoke damage. Those rebates are available today. And there's a lot more work being done on larger initiatives, that our ambitions and the level of support and assistance we want to provide to you is much, much bigger than that. And we'll be sharing what gets developed and what becomes available in the coming weeks and months. And we'll share that information as soon as we have it available. And like has been said by my other Boulder County colleagues, we're very curious to hear your feedback on what are your needs and challenges around building an efficient home, building an electric home, and all of the aspects there, so we can make sure that whatever support that we're able to provide is actually most impactful and most useful to you. So I welcome your feedback in the feedback sessions, and I wish you all the best moving forward, and I hope we get to be in touch.
Thanks, Zach. So now we're going to spend the rest of the time asking for your input, your questions, your concerns, your ideas, your dreams. And we're not going to answer questions tonight. I know that might be a little frustrating, but we promise that we will provide a frequently asked question document within a week that addresses as many of those questions and ideas as possible. And we'll let you know when we post them on the website. But what we've learned over the course of these events since 2010 is that this is a partnership, and we want to start this partnership by understanding what you're going through, what you need, so we can craft the regulations to best serve you. And what we've learned is we need to listen. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to listen. And so we're going to ask you to go into a breakout room, and you will be moved into a breakout room. There'll be a facilitator in it. There'll be a recorder. You're welcome to post questions, ideas, thoughts in the chat. Again, the focus of tonight is rebuilding. It's not on debris removal. Debris removal is going to be its own community-wide forum tomorrow. And we would ask you just raise your hand, and we'll start listening. So thank you, and we'll see you back shortly.
And it looks like our last group is joining us now. Big rush of folks here at the end. So I will turn it over to Katie and Gary to close us out.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks everyone for participating and sharing your concerns and thoughts. As I said, we will put together a FAQ document and let Cheryl and the amazing women that are helping keeping you apprised of things going on when that's available. We will post all of this and all the presentations and the recording on the website tomorrow. If you go on the boco.org/Marshall Fire website, it'll be on the right. Survey link has just been posted. So please it'll probably take you 5 minutes to complete that survey. It's just another way of us understanding your needs so we can craft the regulations to make this as efficient as possible for your recovery. I guess lastly, I just want to say, and some of you probably heard me say this, it's so important that you take care of yourself. This is a really long, hard process. And as you heard Charlie and Debbie talk, whatever the ways that refuel you, whether it's exercise, eating right, taking a trip. I know it's hard to imagine right now, but please do that. It'll really serve you. I mean, I've had to learn that the hard way in this work. And so I have my little reminders and things to do, but it's so important. And as I said before, this is the first of many conversations we're going to have with you. We look forward to getting to know you, to learn about your needs and work in a real partnership. And we're going to be here. As I said, county commissioners have made this #1 priority, putting all our resources toward this. And we've done this before, and this county's amazing community, and we'll all work together. So, Katie, is there anything you wanted to say?
I just want to say to echo Gary's, keep reaching out to us. Our contact information is available. And what I've said to some community members before, which I think helps to know, is that Gary and I, as recovery staff, we were recovery staff before this fire. We will continue to be recovery staff going through this fire. So Boulder County has a permanent recovery function. So we're here ready to help with whatever you need as a resource. And this is our full-time job. We were not reassigned to this. This is what we're here to do and our function at the city.
Thank you, and hope to see you tomorrow night in the debris removal workshop. So thank you all. Have a good night. Thanks, everyone. Take care.